assemble here in Birmingham, I think, a party in a very good mood. In the past, we've done very well in European elections. Indeed, in 2009, with nearly 17% of the vote, we came second across the entire United Kingdom. But what used to happen was that in general elections or in local elections, that vote share would plummet. And we got nearly 1 million people voting for us in 2010, but it was just 3% of the vote. But something really rather radical has changed, because the opinion polls now have us on 9%. Some of them have us on 10%. One the other day had us on 12%. This is a very, very big change, and I congratulate all of you for making it happen. Why is it happening? Well, partly I think that we're quite lucky with our enemies. It could be Mr. Clegg and tuition fees. It could be the Prime Minister and his cast iron guarantees. I think we could be lucky with Miliband, who doesn't seem to want to say anything about anything at all. We could be lucky, but actually, it's not about the individuals. That isn't why people are turning to UKIP. People are turning to UKIP because they look at the three old parties, they look the same, they sound the same, and many of us now have the impression that this country is run by a bunch of college kids on work experience. And we may not have all the answers in UKIP, but my goodness me, we've got a frontline team of people who've held down proper jobs, who've done things in the world, and we have some understanding of what is going on out there in our country. And we've got better at what we're doing. You know, I'd be the first to admit that in the 90s it was at times a bit shambolic. It was an amateur organisation, we didn't have any money, we had no experience. We're getting better at what we do. You know, we came second in that Barnsley by-election last year. We've got an excellent candidate in Margot Parker standing for us in Corby this year, with a really professional team behind her. We're fighting the PCC elections on November the 15th. There'll be a lot of UKIP candidates standing up and down the country, not just Stephen over there. And we'll fight that with a proper manifesto. You know, the Human Rights Act has frankly turned policing and our courts and our whole system of common law on its head. We want to have a full national debate about that. And people are coming to us and joining us and supporting us. People support UKIP not just because of where we stand on the European Union. They support us because they see us now as the voice of opposition in British politics on a broad range of issues. That is why we're up in the polls. But on the key issue on which this party was founded, the whole question of whether we should govern our own country or not, the issue that we've been told, given lies and deceit for decades by UK politicians about the true nature of the European project, what we have to recognise is that that issue is about to shoot to the top of the main political issues in this country. We are not a one-trick pony. We are not a party without a good, broad manifesto. We are reaching out to small businesses. We are reaching out to people campaigning against those ghastly wind farms. We're reaching out across the country. But the key EU question is back, and we certainly won't ignore it, because we believe that this is the key to our future success. It is only by winning back our independence that we can actually put in place the policies that will regenerate this country. Well, I was in Strasbourg last week, where Mr. Barroso fired the opening shot. They're not hiding anymore. They're not pretending anymore. They've used the euro crisis to try and take yet more power for themselves. Mr Barroso, for the first time ever in all my years in the Parliament, used the F word. It's out of the bag. It is going to be a federal Europe. And he was joined within 48 hours by my very good friend, Herman Van Rompuy. And, well, they haven't fined me for a bit, have they? And now 11 foreign ministers have put out a report, and what we're seeing is a draft treaty. We're seeing a treaty that, by Barroso's own admission, will turn the EU into a global power. Mr Barroso is arguing for a stronger army. He's arguing for more overseas military intervention. They are designing the treaty in such a way that they intend for there never to be any more referendums on this EU question. They will, in the treaty, propose a European Union treasury and budgets to be set at a European level. And on the issue of democracy, Mr Barroso says we must transfer our national democracy to a model of European democracy, by which he guesses we must give up parliamentary democracy for all time to the unelected European Commission. And when it comes to those of us that take a slightly different view in the Parliament, he said that I was an extreme populist. Just to add, David, to the list of insults, I'm not quite sure what an extreme populist is. I didn't know Mr Barroso cared, you know. But he also said something very interesting. He said that UKIP and other parties like UKIP were now irrelevant to the EU debate. Well, Mr Barroso, it is UKIP's intentions to make you eat those words. Because the truth is, we've been right on this question. We said from day one that the Eurozone could not and would not work. We've said since the party first came into existence that the European Union would turn itself into a militarised, undemocratic danger to global peace. We've predicted these things, and I think the British public, and indeed the public now over much of Europe, are beginning to see that we were right. And I think this new treaty is so extreme in its proposals that I don't think any UK political party will back it. Even the Lib Dems, with their mad Europhilia, surely could not sign up to a treaty, say they supported a treaty that would condemn them to electoral oblivion. Well, I suppose you never quite know, they might. But it is impossible to see the Conservative or Labour Party supporting this treaty. And so I think now a referendum on this question is inevitable. A new treaty is coming and there will be a referendum. And you might say, well, isn't that good news, Nigel? At last we're going to get the chance to have our vote. I am very, very worried about what I see. From David Owen to Liam Fox, what we are now seeing is the political class uniting around a position. The position is that we don't want to be part of this new federal superstate, but that we do want to be part of the customs union, and we do want to be part of the single market. And there's nothing to fear from all of those things, because we won't be trapped inside a political union with Europe. Well, I've decided to try and take that on, and I've launched a booklet today called A Referendum Stitch-Up, because, ladies and gentlemen, what is happening is now remarkably similar to what happened back in 1975, when those of you, the older members of UKIP, had the opportunity to vote in that referendum, and you were told it was a common market, you were told it was all very nice, the water was lovely, come on in. There's not a problem. They're trying to do the same thing again. And I think that what Cameron will do next week or the week after is to say we can have a referendum on whether we join that full federal union or whether we stay with the single market and the customs union. And that is a battle for us. We have got to go out there as a party and make the arguments We don't want to be stuck inside a customs union that prohibits us from making our own trade deals with the rest of the world, the growing parts of the world. And what we would like to see, after the renegotiation of a simple free trade deal with the European Union, we would like to see Britain thinking bigger. And there's a group of countries out there that represent nearly a third of the population of the globe, where they speak English, have common law, are our real friends in the world. We would like to extend free trade to include the Commonwealth. That's the way forward for British business. And we've got to argue that keeping us in this innocuous sounding single market means that our employment legislation will continue to come from Brussels, that our health and safety legislation will continue to come from Brussels, and that some of the crazier elements of environmental policy which are driving manufacturing industry out of this country and sending it across to India, that would all remain. We've got to have that debate. We've got to take on the political class. What they're also saying is that we should continue to have an open-door immigration policy to the whole of Eastern Europe. And we must respond to that, because at a time when we have a 22% youth unemployment rate in Britain, it is completely irresponsible to have a total open door to the whole of Eastern Europe. Oh, and of course, what they won't tell you is that what their new referendum intends you to vote for is staying within a system where the European courts are still supreme over the British courts, and where the British taxpayer has to go on paying over £50 million a day to be a member of that union. That is not the referendum, ladies and gentlemen, that we in UKIP want. We in UKIP demand that this country is given a full, free and fair choice in a referendum so that we can decide who governs Britain. So we've got the fight of our life on our hands, and remember, the stronger that UKIP become, the more likely it is that we will get that referendum. Now, politics in the UK has changed a lot in the last few years, and we're living in coalition Britain, and everybody seems to be obsessed now with who will do a deal with whom. You might have noticed some speculation about this in the last 24 hours. And I want and I need to set out very clearly before this conference and before this party where we are with this, because one or two of the press reports, frankly, are wrong. We are a full political party with a completely different and more positive manifesto than the other parties in this country. We are fighting the police elections, the by-elections, the county council elections next year, the European elections and general elections. We are in business and we're here to stay. So please make no mistake about that. But if an opportunity came which meant that we could get this country closer to walking through a door marked UK independence, if we had the opportunity to do something that was in our national interest, we would be silly not at least to consider it. But is that going to happen? Well, I don't know. As the general election approaches, people will be looking for supporters. It could be Labour, more likely perhaps it'll be the Conservatives. But all this talk of a deal with the Conservatives hasn't come from me. It's come from members of the Conservative Party saying to David Cameron, look, the Lib Dems are going to get rid of Clegg because you're going to make him the European Commissioner in November 2014 to replace Baroness Ashton. Just get down to the bookmakers quick and get your money on. And that the Lib Dems, under a Vince Cable or a Tim Farron, will look to do a deal with Labour, and if UKIP are 10% or more in the polls, you must do a deal with UKIP. So that's where this whole debate, that's where this whole supposed negotiation comes from. I would say this: we, having spent nearly 20 years of hard work, sacrifice and much mockery, building UKIP into a political brand in this country that is now connecting with millions of ordinary men and women out there. I have my absolute assurance that I am not going to sell this party short for any political gain. Absolutely no way on earth that I would do that. The only way we would even consider a negotiation of any kind at all would be if first an absolute promise was made to give this country a full, free and fair referendum so that we could decide whether we remain members of the EU or not. That would have to be on the table before we even considered any proposal, and we would possibly have a problem even then. You see, some of you may have noticed that there are one or two people in politics who make promises and then break them. So I don't think a cast-iron guarantee would satisfy UKIP. I think at a minimum it would have to be written in blood. So I hope that sets out absolutely clearly where we are. My job here with you this weekend at conference is to say to you, don't be distracted by such press reports. Let's focus, let's concentrate on what we are doing well. And every week I see the by-elections happening at district and county council level. I see the improvement that is happening within this party. You are the most incredibly enthusiastic army. You are achieving great, great things for this party. I'm very proud of what we've achieved in the space of the last 2 years, and I know the national commentators will say, well, you haven't quite yet made the big breakthrough in local government politics. Well, that is true, but we can see from Ramsey and other areas like that we've got the potential to do this, and we are going to drive on to those county council elections next year. We are going to fight an unprecedented number of seats for this party. We are going to start making some significant breakthroughs in local government politics, and that will be, next spring will be, the dress rehearsal for the European elections, which will come in the June of 2014. By then we may well have the bones of a new treaty. We will have a political class doing their best to ignore the issue, doing everything they can to give us a fudged, stitched up referendum, and I think we will be in the driving seat for those European elections. I believe it must be UKIP's aim and goal to win those European elections in 2014, to cause an earthquake in British politics and to change the future of this country forever. And as long as I'm your leader, I promise you I will work night and day for us to achieve that goal. Thank you.